Okay, guys, welcome to another episode or another interview, really client success interview, this time with Rich. Rich has been through the Reignite Pro program over the last 12, 13 weeks and been out of it for what, maybe 3-4 weeks now, something like that. Yeah. Rich has kindly agreed to come on and just talk us through his experience on the program, what he got from it, some of the challenges that he experienced on it, just to really tell his story and give you guys an insight. So Rich, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Don't know if you maybe sort of want to give us a bit of background as to what you do, who you are, not your life story, but an exec summary.
So yeah, I'm Rich Slatter. I lead one of the change teams within Openreach. So I lead on deploying the change into the fiber build part of the organization. So we're fairly busy right now, but I've been in BT and Openreach for about eight and a half years now. So I've been there a fair while.
Nice. And before we kind of started working together, like we talked about coaching a few times, and everyone has a different reason for actually getting help in achieving their goals. For you, like, what was the motivation for actually joining the Reignite Pro program in the first place?
Probably curiosity about covers it, to be quite honest. I'd been on LinkedIn. We'd been connected on LinkedIn and on Facebook. I'd seen what you'd been doing with the Reignite stuff and was kind of curious about it. And we started talking about what you were typically doing with your clients and the way the program worked. And that sort of sparked a bit of curiosity. I was like, that's kind of interesting. And then, I started thinking a little bit more about it. And I got to the point where I was like, well, I know I could be fitter. I know I could be in better shape. And I kind of got to the point where if it was like, well, if not now, when, why not now? And yeah, sort of got to the point where curiosity got the better of me. And I thought I'd better get on and do it.
Nice. But it wasn't always quite like that, was it? I remember you saying a couple of times, it's like, what is this coaching stuff? It's like, it's not personal training, it's not life coaching. You're kind of doing personal development and professional development. Are you selling snake oil? I think were the words that you used.
I think it's fair to say that I did say that, always with a smile on my face, which allows me to get away with it, right?
100%, right? You just say it with a smile. But really, that was possibly what sort of made you stand back a little bit at first. Like, what was your view before and what was your view afterwards of coaching? Because some people have been coached before, but a lot of people haven't.
Yeah, so coaching in general is a broad church, and unfortunately there's some people doing some things that aren't great in there. So there's a new diet for every day of the year, and possibly not all that it's stacked up to be. And I think the sort of stuff you're looking at and the sort of things that you're looking to work through with your clients, there's some big claims, right? And just being totally candid about it, I think I sort of approach a lot of things with a degree of healthy skepticism, and I think it was knowing you beforehand and sort of seeing some of these claims. I was kind of curious to understand what was behind all of this. How you were sort of substantiate, how you delivering this sort of stuff, and that's where the conversation between you and I started to pique my interest. The curiosity I was talking about previously.
And so on the program, right? Program lasted 90 days for you, just over, because we had like a week of onboarding as well. What sort of stood out to you is like, what was the key achievements, or seemed like more than that? It's like, what were you most proud of? Because there was some pretty cool stuff that you kind of took from it. But if you had to pick one or two things, what were the things that stood out to you the most?
I'd probably cheat in the answer slightly, Alex, and say that the thing that stood out was the culmination of what we looked at. I think it's kind of, having popped out the other end and looking back, I'm still a little bit surprised by it. So there were two key areas that we focused on in the 3 months. One was around sort of fitness, and I anchored this around running specifically, as well as a bit of a weight loss goal as well. And then a very different side of it, which was around mindset, resilience, energy, and this sort of thing, just to bring a bit of breadth and a bit of a challenge to it. And I think the thing that stood out most for me is how tackling two different things down two slightly different paths, and obviously two different sets of stuff that we were looking at, has culminated in me feeling quite different after 3 months than when I popped in. We sat down and we did the goal setting right at the start, and I always wanted to do something in the sort of health aesthetics, that the way I am sort of side of things, but also the mindset was another big one as well. Sort of making sure that I'm working on the resilience and all that sort of thing. And we set some pretty bold targets on the sort of fitness side of things. I'll quite happily share at this point that the point we were setting the goals, that one of the milestones to the bigger goal for the exercise thing was to make sure I could actually run a 5K without stopping for a little breather part way around. And we sort of got from that to running 10K. And I remember sitting in the goal session thinking, if I can get there, I'll be pretty pleased with this. It's only 12 weeks. It's not that long. We've got other stuff to look at as well, and work and life outside and all this sort of stuff. And then I think you hypnotized me or something. I twisted my arm somehow, and in the end of this was to by the end of 12 weeks to go off and run half marathon distance. And pretty much straight after that call, I was trying to come up with ways of getting out of that final goal, so if I could get in and delete it, because it genuinely felt like a bridge too far. And yeah, sure enough, managed to achieve it. Felt really good. But the culmination of dropping some weight, achieving the running goals, but also doing a lot of the resilience, the mindset stuff as well. The culmination of all of that, and looking back on where I was 15 weeks ago, it's genuinely surprising in a good way.
And I think the physical stuff people can visualize a little bit better. They can see you were like this, and then now you're like this, and you can run. You actually, it wasn't just one half marathon. You did kind of two within the program, right? So you over exceeded that goal. Mindset,
it wasn't luck.
No, exactly. And I mean, you smashed it out of the park, right? But on the mindset stuff, it's like that can sometimes be harder for people to imagine. It's a word that gets thrown around quite a lot. And we can sit here and define it and say, well, it's the inner voice. We can say it's the cognitive thought that drives your behavior. But actually, when you use the term now, 12 weeks later, as opposed to, at the beginning of the program, what's changed for you in that space? What's different now with in relation to your mindset and energy, if we kind of look at those two facets?
Probably more than I can describe easily, but it's genuinely just feeling much more in order, and much more able to balance the things that are going on. Because of course, when I signed up to do this, there's everything going on with work, which is like everybody's constantly busy at work, and then there's life outside of work, family, and all that sort of stuff. And it felt incredibly busy, and I was quite conscious of the fact that I was willingly adding more into that, which is to focus on a program for 90 days that I wanted to get stuff out. So that was going to take time. So initially it was, how do I make time for this extra thing that I wasn't doing last week? But I think the process that we worked through together, it's kind of a bit like a tasting menu, I suppose. So there's a sort of tasting menu of different things that we can look at. There's some breath work, and there's some I won't give too much away, some of the Wim Hof stuff that you were looking at, and some mindfulness stuff, and starting to stack this up. But it starts off with giving a bit of structure, and that starts with prioritization. And I think the stuff that we did really early on to make sure that I was putting the structure in place to absolutely make sure I could maintain my commitments out of work, my commitments in work, and make time for doing the stuff for the resilience, the mindfulness stuff, and getting out for a run and preparing meals and all this sort of stuff. That early stuff to get myself organized, to create the space, to prioritize, to put the hygiene factors in place, I suppose, to make sure that I wasn't giving myself the easy out of, I'm just too busy, I've got this going on, I need to go and do that, and therefore almost giving myself the easy route to go, sorry Alex, I've not done any of this week, and therefore wasting time. I think having the structure, working through the process with you to prioritize the absolute minimum baseline that I would expect of myself from this program and beyond, that was the tipping point. And then there's loads of really interesting stuff and loads of tangents that we can go off down, and you start and open the doors. But the big thing for me was the structure, the prioritization, that allowed me the headspace and the diary space to go off and start and do this sort of thing.
And so you'd been sorting out your outer game, right? The structure, the schedules, kind of buying back more time in effect, A, through freeing up time, and B, through prioritizing it. But also, I guess, in the morning, one of the things we look at is morning movement. You're exercising more consistently, so possibly having more energy to get more done in your day. But it's quite often I'll speak to guys, and if anyone's watching this live or on replay, if they're thinking, well, I've got family, I've got work, I want to try and be fit and healthy, but I can just never manage to fit it in. Like, what advice would you kind of give to those guys that kind of use, like, time is a limited quantity in their life?
I think it's kind of looping back to where I was before. So I was there. I'm no time management master or anything like that. I think the thing that repeatedly I realized repeatedly through the process was, by taking a little bit of time to prioritize what you're spending your day, your week, your month, 3 months, whatever the time frame is, by stopping, almost in my case, forcing myself to prioritize the things I had to get done for work, for outside work, and for the program, and making sure that there was physically time held for them. It's incredible. I found it incredible how much time I was kind of frittering away on low value add stuff that you can either get done much more quickly if you really focus on it, or actually just don't do. And you don't notice that that bit of whatever social media browsing time that you missed out on, or whatever it may be, getting up a little bit earlier, buying yourself a little bit of time. I think there's a lot of things that we can do. But I think the reason it's so difficult is there isn't no one size fits all. If there was an easy answer, people would have spotted it, they would have implemented it, and this wouldn't be something that you bump into on a regular occasion. So I think actually taking the time to have the honest conversation with yourself, have the honest conversation with you, and then implement some of the optimization off the back of that was the pivotal thing, to be quite honest.
I guess a valuable insight. And whilst we talked about what you've achieved and are most proud of on the program, it's like 12 weeks is, sometimes I'll talk to guys and they think, 12 weeks, I'm just going to come in and smash this. And I'm not saying that guys don't, right? But 12 weeks is a microcosm for life. Like, shit happens. Stuff is going to happen that you couldn't have planned for even in your wildest dreams. And, you walked into a number of challenges on the program. How did you kind of make sure that you, A, got the most out of the program, B, we hit the outcomes, but you were able to sort of navigate those without kind of having them take you off course? Like, how did you kind of juggle that?
I think it starts with having a strong enough motivation to join the program in the first place. If you're coming in for a few nice conversations and I don't know, whatever, maybe lose a bit of weight, it's probably not going to be that rewarding. It's probably not going to be as much value as if you take a little bit of time and properly get yourself into, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to invest the time and resources into doing this. and then once you've got that, you kind of get a bit emotionally invested to it. You've spoken to my partner about it, and you're kind of starting to say, okay, I'm going to go off and do this, and this is what I'm going to expect out of it, and this is how I'm going to attack it, and all this, and you start and psych yourself up. And like you say, 12 weeks, 3 months, something will go wrong in that time. It may be massive, it may be, hopefully it'll be minor, but it's not really logical to think that it's going to be smooth sailing for all of that. And I think it then comes back to I feel a bit like a parrot, prioritizing. So if something else comes in and takes a load of time or whatever it may be, it's working out what's the absolute minimum and what's the extra you could go on. And I think it's then on a daily, weekly basis reprioritizing. So making sure that work isn't suffering, but also making sure that I'm holding myself to account to actually get out there and hit the whatever minimum number of runs or whatever it may be, to make sure that I hold that baseline. Because the thing that I found, having started to do this when it got a little bit difficult, so where things started to go off plan a little bit, it was quite interesting that when I really forced myself to make sure that I was doing the things that I had committed to make sure that was the minimum, there was a sense of achievement. So despite the fact that it wasn't ideal, there was a sense of achievement in holding myself to what was then fast becoming a new baseline. Because if you can do it when it's not great times and still get through it and come out the other side having hit the minimum levels that I'd set for myself, like the rest of the time it's that little bit easier, because they've sort of stood a bit of a test. They're a bit more embedded, they're a bit more, the whole thing's a little bit more resilient. It's sort of more entrenched.
It's that kind of moving from, I guess, like an athlete mindset, performing at your best when you're at your best, to almost like a marine mindset of you're actually still able to perform at your best even when you've got some really tough challenges and you're feeling your worst. It's like that kind of stood out to me as you went through the program. There were a couple of times, couple of weeks when things just really weren't going your way, and you still were able to actually get the physical outcomes, achieve the physical goals that we set. Weight on the scale is still going down, still hitting the exercise targets, still nutrition kind of where you want it to be. And then when it kind of hits you, maybe, there's no kind of litmus test for how long these things take. Like, everyone's different, but maybe the time that you bounce back, you just bounce back that much quicker, right? Rather than it taking, let's say arbitrarily a month, you kind of actually it takes you a week or 10 days and allows you to then sort of fast track to the next thing.
Yeah, I think the key point in all of this was we had a conversation, and the takeaway from me was, in essence, there was I mean, if I'd have really pushed, maybe I'd have wanted to hit pause for a couple of weeks and then come back on. But actually, I'm having had that conversation, that would have been such the wrong thing, because having a weird sort of gap in all of this, it would have unwound a lot of the progress that I'd made. But also, all of the stuff that we're looking at here is a controllable. It's totally within my gift, whether I get up and go for a run. It's totally within my gift whether I go and eat a burger, or whether I eat something a little bit better than a burger. And by controlling the controllables, it does give a degree of achievement, and therefore sort of propelled me forward through that. So there's a load of stuff I couldn't control, but this was absolutely something I could control, and it sort of built a momentum.
I think one of the examples that stood out to me, right, was towards the end of the program, you went on holiday. And I've worked with clients before where before coming onto the program, they've had a holiday and they've gone and put on 7-8 pounds, right? Because they're almost like, well, I'm going to sort this out, so let's kind of enjoy myself now. And you came back, the same weight, if not lighter, after a week of being away. And we talked through these kind of different systems aligned to 4 pillars of transformation. Like, what was it like going on holiday and having those tools, or even like having maybe a slightly different mindset? What changed and allowed you to do that and come back the same way, if not lighter?
first off, I don't want anybody thinking that I went on holiday and just ate salad for a week, because that definitely didn't. I just ate salad and drank sort of fizzy water. No, that definitely didn't happen. I think the thing that had changed was I'd become much more aware, and this sounds really boring. I'm really conscious of this. It sounds dull, but I'll say it anyway. I've become much more aware of kind of what's in foods. I previously, whilst I was fortunately not to be in like horrendous physical shape, but I never used to think loads about what I was eating. I didn't have a bad diet by any stretch of the imagination, but given it was probably week 10 or week 11 that I went on holiday, it was right towards the end of the program, and I didn't want to go and undo weeks of good work and have a horrible moment as I stood on the scales afterwards. But similarly, the bigger thing was that I'd kind of changed my approach to the way I was eating. It was a bit more considered, a bit more calculated, I suppose. And we'd had a chat about sort of strategies for tackling the holiday. Not one of them was don't go near a dessert, don't have any more than 2 beers. There was none of that nonsense. It was all about balance. So I ate and drank very well on holiday, but there were a few things like going for a run. Like it took to going for a run in the morning, and then so by the time you come out and eating breakfast, you're like, well, I kind of earned that, so we're already ahead for the day. Another one is having a later breakfast, not really bothering with lunch. You having 2 big meals in a day. Well, that's better than 3 big meals in a day. But it never felt like I was going without. I didn't sit there and go, I'm on a diet on a holiday. This is miserable. I still enjoyed the evenings, had a good few drinks and all the rest of it. And it just felt a much more balanced, considered way of going about things, and still had a good time.
Nice. You talk about, I mean, you kind of talk in and around one of the systems we use, conscious consistency, which is, I guess, the program's answer to diets, which presuppose a start and an end point. We also kind of went through Kaizen, just focusing on 2 to 3 things each week to make transformation more manageable, do it in bite-sized chunks. And a few other things like moving from motivation, which requires willpower all the time, to more of a state of inspiration, what your values are aligned to your vision. Like, what do you think? What stands out to you as maybe sort of a system that you will continue to use past the end of the program? You think actually that was really useful, and I think I can use that ongoing.
I'll take a bit of artistic license with your question. I'll say 2. I think it's conscious consistency. It kind of resonated with me. And I'm sure I'm fairly typical of others watching this. I'd never eaten a cake and never considered that it was really, really good for me. But I definitely didn't have a full appreciation of how that might fit within a bigger way of eating that would be good for me. And I think the thing that jumped out at me when we first started talking about conscious consistency was just something that was pretty subconscious a good part of the time, which was, I'll go and make a sandwich for lunch, and I'll have fish and chips on a Friday night and all this sort of stuff. Actually, not allowing myself just to sleepwalk into what I was going to do, but sitting down and planning what I was going to eat and keeping a bit of an eye on it, and being able to understand what went in there. It was quite a realization of how much sort of extra stuff I was eating and how the balance of it all wasn't quite right. So, and it wasn't like, not once through all of this is you shouldn't be eating that, but it's understanding how eating whatever it may be can fit into a broader way of eating that allows you to eat that stuff, enjoy it, and still maintain the weight, lose weight, put on site, whatever it is that you want to achieve. But the other one is Kaizen, and the reason I take 2 is because they feel very, very firmly linked in this program. So once you've got clear in your head what you're eating, how you're eating, then it comes into tweaking that slightly. And again, that's not doing away with chocolate or stopping drinking or anything nuclear like that, but it's substituting certain things. I still have butter, but go for a different type of butter. Still have a drink, but change what you're drinking. And it means that you can kind of still get the same outcome, take a different route to it, and still underpin the, you know, it should be a weight loss target or a fitness target, aesthetic target, whatever it may be. You're still doing the same thing. You're just taking a slightly different option to get there and sweating the benefits for it. And I think that the two together are something that, you know, after the program is sort of ingrained into my mind. And you know, it's the sort of thing that you can continue just by having a bit of a plan, having a bit of think about what you're going to eat and, you know, where you want to make some changes.
Nice. Okay. Well, look, so, you know, some of the things that you achieved on the program, right? 10 kilograms lighter, 2 half marathons, better sort of resilience and more energy. But, you know, when you think about, I guess, what would you say is the one takeaway from this program? You know, if you had to nail it down to one thing, what would that be?
I think it's the overall self-confidence, self-reliance boost that I got from it. So, like, you know, what the structure of the program, the tools, all this sort of stuff, like, you know, really, really good, you know, really brought it to life. But ultimately, you can't force me to do this. We live a long way apart. You can't force me to do this. So therefore, there's this sort of partnership thing. And coming out of that, and the sum total of having gone in and set some fairly ambitious targets and then come out not only having survived 12 weeks talking to you every week, but also feeling you know, really upbeat about it, really positive, you know, and the kick that you get from achieving something, that was a kick that I got from achieving something that was a bit bigger, a bit more ambitious than I was expecting. It's slightly addictive, which I'm a bit worried about, but in a good way. And yeah, I'm kind of buoyed by the whole thing, to be honest. And you know, the planning of, you know, what do I want to go beyond the end of the program? You know, in one of the final coaching sessions that we had on the program, you know, we were talking about the fact that, you know, I feel that it's not thank God I've got to the end of the 12 weeks, I can get off this treadmill and go back to the fridge now. But it's much more about, okay, that's kind of got me to this point. We've got the tools. I think the thing that sticks with me is how much this has sort of got in my head, I suppose, and tweaked a few things. And now I'm looking at, you know, the next weight loss goal, so a little bit further. What do I want to do with the physical exercise side of things, and one or two things like that. It's definitely opened up a sort of different route to start and take, and there'll be something that comes after this. I've just not quite yet know what that might be.
Nice. We're opening up Pandora's box, so to speak.
Definitely felt like that at times, Alex. Yes.
I'm conscious of your time, dudes. One of the things I just wanted to get your thoughts on was, you know, coaching, getting help. You know, when is it the right time to do it? If and when is it the right time to do it? Because a lot of people can be watching this. They maybe kind of thought, oh, actually, I want to get some help, but I'm unsure. You know, if you were speaking to the version of you, you know, before you even started doing any of this, what would you kind of say to that version?
An awful lot, but specifically on this, I think the interesting thing here is there's so much out there in the, you know, the internet and in the sort of collective consciousness around, you know, eating a calorie deficit, and, you know, so many things that we all kind of almost intuitively know. And I knew that, you know, how to get at some of this sort of stuff. But I think the realization that I came before I started on this was, if I really knew how to do it and I had all I needed to do it, I would have done it, but I hadn't. So therefore, something was missing. So I think I got to the point where I needed something to get me started and to kickstart the whole thing. And, you know, I think if I was doing this again, I would probably advise myself to probably, before the program, spend a little longer thinking about where I wanted to get to, what I wanted out of the program, and start and try and break that down myself. Because I think what I would have done is I would have either got a bit of a head start on things, and that would be great, or I would have really plainly painted to myself the picture that is, I don't have all the tools that I need to do this. I'm deceiving myself. I don't know enough stuff, or I don't have enough discipline, structure, call it what you will, to get this over the line. But I would have sort of come to you more prepared, more open about the fact that I need a bit of structure, a bit of a kick up the arse, and one or two things. And I think that would be the only thing that I would approach differently. So if I was going to go back in time and look at myself, I would probably try to invest a little bit more time in where I wanted to get to, what I want to get out of it. And going back a little while in this conversation, kind of getting my head into the end, sort of the emotional link into the end game of the program, because I think that is what ultimately kept me pushing through when things got a little bit tough during the program. But
yeah, such a value point, I think.
But I think ultimately what you brought to this was that combination of enabling, so tools, coaching, and also the accountability. Like there's that sort of two sides of the whole relationship, which is one that's enabling, and the other is, but you didn't go for that extra run that you said you would do. And I think there is something in a nice way that just pushed me on to do a little bit more than I'd have done if I was sat here on my own, not having to be accountable to you or anybody else. So I think that's a big differential, is that sort of balance of enabling knowledge, experience, the tasting menu of tools and techniques that you bought, as well as being somebody to just quietly hold me to account to doing, set the goals. How do you get on?
I think it's a powerful point, right? Powerful combination of, you've got the accountability on the program. You've also got, it's not just calories in, calories out. Actually, you need to know, how many calories should I be eating to eat in a sustained calorie deficit? Am I eating enough protein to make sure that I'm not getting muscle degeneration? And how do I become emotionally connected so that after I stop working with someone, I can actually continue to do this? All of which is an art and a science. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's like there's some important stuff in there. So, look, Rich, I just wanted to say thank you for coming in and kind of talking through your experience, your story, and the ups and downs over the last kind of 3 months. It's been, from my perspective, been awesome having you on the program and coaching you, and can't wait to see what happens next.
You and me both, but thank you. It's been really good, and it does genuinely, I've not been hypnotized to say this, but it genuinely does feel like a sort of waypoint in where I go next. I'm kind of intrigued to see. Awesome. Well, look, guys, thank you for tuning in today. We will be back next week with another flagship training. I'm not going to divulge what it is, but keep an eye out for that one. Until then, take care.